evening. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Quincy Ordinance Subcommittee on 2022-131 Order Home Rule Petition for Quarry Hills Lease Extension. Ms. Manning, can you call the roll?
Councilor Andronico. Councilor Kane.
Present.
Councilor DeBona. Present. Councilor Harris. Councilor Liang.
Present.
Councilor Mahoney. Present. Councilor Phelan.
Present.
Chairman McCarthy.
Present.
8 members, you have a quorum.
Thank you. The open meeting language, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. So this evening, we are going to get back into the Quarry Hills lease. The Quarry Hills Association is here tonight. Before we start, I want to turn it over to Chief of Staff Chris Walker for a few comments. We'll then bring up the Quarry Hills folks. We then will go to the public for comments. Again, a couple of things, even for my colleagues. I'm going to implement Rule 10, which is 15 minutes for each person to talk. Up here at the podium, it's going to be 4 minutes like school committee, open forum, so we can keep it moving. I think that's a good way to get all the questions and concerns out. With that, I'll go to Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, councilors. We have a number of items to present relative to an update from the last meeting on this issue. I'd first like to introduce the team that's with us here this evening. Solicitor Jim Timmons is with us. We'll answer any specific questions the councilors may have relative to the draft lease, and also from the team from Quarry Hills Associates with us today. We have Eric Mason, Will O'Connell, Tom O'Connell, Mary Orlando, and Walter Hannon from Granite Links. As I mentioned, we have a number of items present relative to updates and some new information on the home rule petition authorizing a new lease for Quarry Hills Associates, which is better known, as we all know it as, Granite Links Golf Club. I'll speak briefly on a few items that have been newly written into the draft lease. And the team from Quarry Hills and Granite Links will present their work product, which is all the result of the initial feedback from this body, members of the public, and through a number of subsequent meetings outside the council chambers. But prior to getting into the nuts and bolts of the specific progress that's been made, and it has been substantial, I wanted to provide the body with a level of reassurance relative to process. I had a long, productive conversation with Councilor Lang at the beginning part of last week, and she talked about some specifics about a framework moving forward. I'm sure the council will speak about that framework during the time for council feedback on exactly what she's thinking. But based on that conversation and subsequent conversations that I had with a number of councilors, including Councilor Harris, Councilor Andronico, pretty much everyone, I want to reassure the body that the administration is not pushing or asking for a vote this evening. Together with the Granite Links team, we're going to listen. Compile all the issues and questions. We know we have a number of questions that have been forwarded to the administration already from some councilors. We're compiling those. We don't have all of those ready for distribution at the moment, but what we want to do is present one full package based upon what we already have, based upon what we're going to get this evening and the subsequent days, not do it piecemeal going forward. So we're going to continue to work through those questions and provide this body with a full documentation record relative to all the questions and concerns that have been raised, that we believe ultimately will provide the reassurance the body knows that this lease extension remains, as I mentioned in my introduction when we first introduced this, going back some weeks now, that this is a good deal for the city of Quincy and it's a good deal for Granite Links. With that, I would draw your attention to the lease that you all received. There are a couple items in there that are fresh from the last meeting. The first, I'd point your attention to page 3. We're excluding from the lease the site of the Lions Turning Mill. This is at the request of the Lions Turning Mill and the Quarry Museum folks, led by Al Biener. I'm sure everyone in the room knows Al and the amount of work that he's put into that facility up there. We're looking forward to having that property incorporated into the Department of Natural Resources and maximizing that resource for historic purposes going forward. Obviously looking forward to working with Al and the team over there to make that happen. And that was an agreed upon item from both the Granite Links team, the city, and the Quarry Museum. Secondly, on page 5, you'll note language that pertains directly to the trail access and improvements that the Granite Links team will talk about in some detail this evening. This is the first time that the trail access has ever been memorialized as part of the actual lease. As everyone remembers, the trail access, those issues that were sort of brought to a head at the last meeting, those were all part of the state process, incorporated into DCR, then MDC language, DEP language. They were never actually part of the lease. You'll note that the language now does include provisions that require trail access and maintenance of those trail access points as part of the lease. And lastly, I just want to sort of re-highlight, also on page 5, the language relative to the playing fields. As I mentioned briefly during our introduction at the last meeting, the playing fields, improving them and protecting their long-term viability was the major priority for the mayor in discussions over the new lease. As you can see, this language greatly strengthens the city's ability to ensure that those playing fields are properly maintained and reconditioned when necessary. Most importantly, it specifically calls out the necessary drainage improvements that need to be made to those facilities in the near term. So there's full agreement on what's going to happen with those playing fields, the maintenance of them, the improvement of them, and the ongoing care of them. With that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulgence. I'll turn it over to Mr. Mason from Granite Links Associates to talk about the really substantive work that went into, based upon a number of meetings, a number of conversations that the Granite Links team had with the Friends of the Blue Hills, a number of residents, and a number of other stakeholders relative to the trail access point that was really the core focus of, I think, a lot of the discussion at the last meeting. Thank you.
With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mason and Quarry Hills to do the presentation. They've done I think, a tremendous job in highlighting a lot of points that a lot of folks wanted to see. So, Kevin, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors, can you hear me? Good. I would like to thank you first for giving the Quarry Hills team the opportunity to come and provide a status update based on some of the feedback we received last time we were here, I believe it was in October, specifically tied to, one, the compliance of the existing trail systems and surrounding Granite Links, but also working with the Friends of the Blue Hills and other groups to identify potential means of travel to access the Blue Hills. Tonight I'll be presenting to you the recap of our meeting from December 8th, where we had actually, let me go forward. Okay. Before I get to that, hot off the press, so as we look at the slide up here, this is showing the rental payments to the city of Quincy dating from 2003 to 2010 as an average on the left-hand side, and it shows from 2011 over to 2022 the growth that we had between those years. So there we go. Looking at the first bar we show, as I had mentioned, from 2003 to 2010 shows the average rental payment, which was approximately $275,000. It remained kind of stagnant up until about 2016, where we started introducing and repurposing capital into the equation and making strategic investments around the property to grow the revenue also, and by nature, growing the rental payment. When you look at the growth from right to left, starting in 2016, going over to 2022, we see a year-on-year increase of about $370,000 year-on-year. Most recently, in 2022, was the best year from a contribution standpoint, where we contributed $825,000, or we paid $825,000 in rental payments to the city of Quincy. Overall, I think that, as you can see, between 2002 and 2022, the overall rental payments made to the city of Quincy is roughly $7.6 million. So a great contribution overall. The takeaway from this slide, before I get into the presentation, is that the Quarry Hills team has demonstrated the capability and the capacity to understand what makes things tick on the Hill. Right? We understand how to use our working capital and deploy it into situations that not only grows our revenue, but also the rental component that goes to the city of Quincy. Any questions? Can't hear me? Any better? Too tall. Okay. Sure. As mentioned on 12/8, we hosted a group of about 25 folks with the major objective of, one, showing compliance of the existing trail systems, and two, to get a feel for the voice of our customers, the people that travel these trails that voice their opinion and their thought based on the October meeting that we have. As a result of this meeting, we have arrived at the same conclusion that, one, although we do have signs in place and trail markers, they're not to the standard that we feel happy with, nor the Friends of the Blue Hills. We feel that a semi-annual maintenance program is in order. We'll talk about that on the next slide. And lastly, based on some of the areas that we identified to try to find a win-win solution to find a new means to travel into the Blue Hills from Rashudi Drive versus going through the golf course, we need to mitigate some traffic concerns that are on Rashudi Drive to ensure safe passage across Rashudi Drive. So before I get into the actual presentation itself, I just want to thank the Friends of the Blue Hills for being great partners through this process. I know we had the meeting on 12/8, but we've had many on top of that, and they've recommended Karen Shanley of Good, which is a company that specializes in the creation of trail maps. And we've met with her a few times, and she's been working with the Friends of the Blue Hills to find again, a win-win solution to upgrade these trail signs as they currently stand. So the aligned scope of the project was, one, to mitigate the traffic issues, for working closely with the city of Quincy by adding a pedestrian crosswalk and flashing lights on Rashudi Drive. And I'll show the map of that area so it's more clear. Two would be the maintenance plan, so the implementing of a semi-annual maintenance plan. And lastly, the overview of the trail signs and maps, the upgrade of that there. As Mr. Walker had mentioned, both trail maintenance plans and the maps of signage are all contained in the content and language of the lease. So the first thing we'll talk about is the public safety aspect of it. So as you can see, traveling up on Rashudi Drive, the first turnoff that you have in the MDC lot is adjacent to the Berry quarry on the left-hand side. That actually does connect to the Blue Hills Trail system from behind the quarry. So one of the options that we had explored on the day of the first walk was coming from the parking lot on the right-hand side, traveling across the crosswalk behind the Berry to give access to the trails that lead to the Blue Hills. So working in parallel with the city of Quincy to implement an adequate solution that gives public safety as you cross that road. The next slide I have is talking about the annual maintenance plan or the trail plan. So we fully admit that we need to implement a semi-annual plan, which we have chose, and it's identified in the lease, with a March and a November timeframe where we go and we groom the trails and we maintain that, which means picking up any debris if there's any downed trees, things of that nature. But before we even get to that, as we walk the trail, we realized that as you can kind of see it here, I thought it would show a little bit better than this, but on the picture on the top, you can't really tell the difference between the grass behind the Archstone building, that complex, and what the actual trail is. So as a mitigation strategy or to initial repair to get to a baseline that we will maintain to, we will be laying down, working with the Archstone team, crushed stone dust to actually add a visual to the walking trail itself. And this trail also leads right to the back of the ball fields, just to directionally orient you. As an outcome, and based on the feedback from the Friends of the Blue Hills, we had identified the need for 5 Welcome Wayward maps. This is consistent to what you see on the slide deck here. It's not an exact replica. This is of a different park location, but it's very much the same flavor of what you see up there. So the 5 locations scatter from coming up Prosciutti Drive by the ball fields to back by the gas easement to Cunningham Park, looking at the baseball field entrance, the Randolph exit on the backside and the Milton property, and then the other gas easement on the other side of Milton is at the bottom of the picture over there. In addition to that, there'll be directional trail signs and trail reassurance markers that I will show you. The project timeline, so as of right now, we are in probably halfway through phase 1 with completion date by the end of this week. It's a 5-phase project where we're collecting data, understanding and exploring concept, content design and development is the next step, finalization and fabrication is after that, and then installation and maintenance. So we expect, bearing supply chain issues, to have the trail signs and the markers complete by the end of July, so 7/21. So that is our targeted completion date for installation. And then I'll walk you through real quickly the general assessment. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we hired Karen to come in and work with the Friends of the Blue Hills and also the Quarry Hills team to give us an overview and a recommendation of how we should improve the trail path. So this was her commentary here, everything that we aligned to as a collective group on that day in 12/8. The goal is to really improve the sign and trail systems, creating navigation guides across the trail to keep it consistent with what we see in other areas of Blue Hills. So as I mentioned, there's 3 different types. We're looking at the wayward maps at 5 locations that were outlined at the beginning of the presentation, directional trail signage, various types of that, and I'll show you in the coming slides, and then reassurance markers, which are basically in-trail systems, whether it's paint or a medallion that shows you what trail you're on. So as mentioned, the Welcome Wayward map, so these will be located across the existing trail systems, 5 in total. And as you zoom in, this is what it looks like. It's a lot of detail here, so we're in the process of recreating the maps to show a 3D rendering of that, so it's actually more representative of what we see today. The directional trail signage, so we haven't come to a conclusion here yet, but there's many different versions of this as we flip through. We're working with Karen. We're going to go with the recommendation based on the collaboration between the Friends of the Blue Hills, Karen, and the Quarry Hills team. Another example of the directional trail signs. And then, as I mentioned, the reassurance markers. So they're color-coded so that you understand what path you're on. This is just a blown-up version of the Quarry Hills trail map. So again, we're working on the 3D rendering that will be on the Wayward side maps. I believe that's it.
Thanks, Kevin. You guys, I know that date, what did you say? Was it December 8th we were up there?
December 8th, yes.
And we had a good showing from the Blue Hills folks, along with a few counselors that made the trip. So we got to see the trails that admittedly needed some tender loving care. And this is a great, I'll call it first step, big step on taking care of this matter in regards to the lease. The O'Connells also, I've been in communication with them back and forth, and they've been willing to do, whatever needs to be done up there. And I think we're headed in the right direction. So I want to thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else in the Quarry Hills team wants to say anything before I open it up to the public. But I will, I'll have you sit down, Kevin. We'll open up to the public. Then I'll come back to my colleagues and on comments on not just the trails that you see tonight, but on the lease. So make sure you cover, all your questions, all your subjects, and not just get caught up in the trails. But I know that was a big sticking point. So with that, there are sign-up sheets in the back for those who don't want to come. But with that, I'll open it up to whoever wants to lead off. Name, address, and city, please.
Good evening, councilors. No? Don't touch it? Sorry.
Sorry.
If there's something wrong to do, I'll find it. Don't worry. My name is Steve Perdios. I live at 86 Ruggles Street in beautiful Quincy Point. Thank you, councilors, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Councilor McCarthy, the councilors. There's a group of us that have been trying to drill down into this issue. We have 6 or 7 items that we want to mention to you tonight that are pretty critical to us. I think that this topic has really kind of caught the attention of a lot of Quincy residents. This is a big issue. 99 years is a long time. This is our one bite of the apple in 99 years, so we want to do this right. We have had the opportunity to meet with some of you, most of you individually. Councilor Kane, we had a productive phone call the other day. I hope that we get a chance to meet with you in person as you, Councilor McCarthy. Hopefully we can meet in person and talk through some of our issues with you. The rest of you, thank you for the time that you gave us to meet with you about this. I briefly want to touch on the 7 topics that some other people will come up and speak to tonight. I'm very happy to hear that there's some progress made on the trails. That's one of our issues. It's a lot of talk about that tonight. We love that there's progress. We want to see trails that move through the golf course. This is our property. This is City of Quincy property. We want to see trails restored that go through the golf course and connect more directly with Blue Hills. That's very, very critical. I'm happy to hear that there's talk about the ball fields. The drainage is definitely a big deal out there, but there's screening, having 4 fields back to back. People are getting rifled in the heads with foul balls all the time. The bathrooms are deplorable. Traffic getting in and out is horrendous. And City of Quincy paid for lighting 2 of the fields. There needs to be lighting for the other 2 fields. Pardon me, a little dry mouth. Traffic stems from not just on Rashidi Drive, but it stems all the way out into the Rotary. There needs to be a real investigation as to what's going on in the Rotary, and let's put the traffic before the development. Let's get the traffic resolved before anything gets expanded. Financial accountability, there was a slide tonight on some finances. This is a public facility. Let's throw the books open and see what's going on here. Let's get a real good understanding of where the finances are for this entire project. Is 10% really the right number? Is that really the right number that we should be asking for? If we're going to be looking at this for 99 years with a lot of expansion up there, what's the right number to go with? And as I mentioned, the 99-year lease, is that really the right extension, the right length of time? So what we're asking councilors tonight, I'm very happy to hear that there isn't going to be a vote tonight. That's smart. I think this is a big project that should be thought through and examined well and really drilled down into. And to do that, we're asking specifically that the council set up a steering committee that includes members of the council, members from the mayor's office, members from the developer, members from the public, so that we can work through these issues in an open and transparent method to try to find a solution here that's going to allow everything to move forward. So thank you for your time. I'm going to turn this over to some others that will come up and talk about these individual topics. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Steve. And that was perfect on the time. Perfect. You're worried when you were the first guy up. I said, look who's coming. And, beautiful.
Thank you. My name is Tom Palmer. I live in Milton. I'm a member of Milton Town Meeting, and I'm missing Town Meeting tonight. I'm also on the Milton Concom, and for years I was a officer of the Friends of the Blue Hills, a former president, and I would like to talk about the trails. I know it's not the only issue here, but it's the issue that seems most prominent to me. If you look at the third page of our handout, it's this curious map here. This is a map that was published by the Friends of the Blue Hills before there was a Quarry Hills project, although it's predicted here with this orange blob. At any rate, the point of this map is to show that there were trails going through here before there was a Quarry Hills project. This area is a large area. It separates neighborhoods in West Quincy and East Milton from the Blue Hills Reservation. It's all public land. And when it was landfill, there were trails that went through and made it easy for people who live, say, Grove Street area, Forest Street, in Milton, Patricia Drive, Gerald Drive, Lyman Road. You could walk through and get to the Blue Hills, and it was an important amenity for those neighborhoods. Now, that is no longer possible because the dirt came in and the trails were not put on top of the dirt after the dirt arrived. They weren't restored. The second picture I have for you is an aerial photo showing suggestions of where such trails might go. The leased premises at Quarry Hills include a 27-hole golf course and a mile-long border with the Blue Hills Reservation. And in order for those two open space uses to be compatible, from our point of view, you really have to allow passage over that boundary. But there is no such passage. If you look at these trail maps here, they're kind of hard to read. But what is on offer is one trail over on the Milton side, one on the Quincy side, and they do not connect, and they don't go to the Blue Hills. So if you drive to Quarry Hills today and try to go to the Blue Hills, as we did at the site visit, we were led away from the Blue Hills, and we never got any closer. I have one more illustration here. Yeah, this is a map Quarry Hills has provided, and you see these trails do not connect with each other, and they do not connect the open spaces that surround the leased premises on the developed side. And so there is now no way to do what people once could do, which was to enjoy the Blue Hills by walking there. And as you know, part of this project was a construction of apartments. There are now 500 more apartments on Ricciuti Drive than there were before the project began. But none of those new Quincy residents can walk directly to Blue Hills because there is a rule that Quarry Hills has adopted, which there shall be no pass on the golf course. And the pass they are offering are not actually on the leased premises at all, except for the driveway up to the clubhouse. They're on the edges or on land that is belonging to other people. So I was with the Friends of the Blue Hills when these agreements were worked out that trails would be constructed and they would restore these connections. And a lesson for me in that process was that getting it in writing doesn't mean you're going to get it. Because although this was worked out in 1997 and 98 at the beginning of the project, in 2005, one of the developers, Mr. Geilich, wrote to DEP and said, we can't have any hikers on the golf course. And that was a complete about-face from all the original planning, including, of course, the illustration in the ledger in 1997, which shows a hiking trail going across a golf course from Fuller's Quarry to the Socket Notch Path. So, from our point of view, allowing or restoring access to the Blue Hills from the neighborhoods around it should not disturb the golf playing. It's possible to have walking paths on golf course, as you can see at Ponkapaug. And so I hope this discussion will lead to a restoration of that access and connections over that mile-long shared boundary that was lost to the project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Hassan Haydar. I live at 154 Colonial Drive in Quincy. I'm here tonight to express my support to the lease extension. Quarry Hills and few other companies, entities in Quincy took Quincy from being good to being better, and I believe with your wisdom, best is not that far away. I give a loud yes to the lease extension. And to you, I give a loud thank you for working hard, taking care of our community, and thus taking care of all of us. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jean Owens, and I live in Hatherley Road in Quincy. And I just wanted to continue some of the issues that came up. So at the time of the original lease, one of the main concerns was dealing with the methane that was at the project. And if you can see on this page in the handout, this was shown in the Patriot Ledger. There was quite an elaborate drawing here showing how the methane would be handled and managed. And currently, when we look there, what we see is on the next page, there is nothing except what looks like a wreck of some original work that's been done there. So one of the main concerns that I and my group have is about accountability. What about due diligence? If something is said and a plan is put forth, how do we guarantee, especially over the proposed very, very long lease, that this happens? So to grant something and then just let it go is just not the right thing to do. Quarry Hills is a for-profit corporation. They never said that they are interested in developing our open space and making it into a recreational facility for anyone other than their paying customers. It would be a mistake for Quincy to expect that we will just get something for people other than the paying customers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Jocelyn Sedney, 85 Monroe Road in Quincy. Before I make the comments I do have, I just wanted to address a concern that I have had because I've heard comments from the state level all the way down to the local level from some people saying we should agree with this newly negotiated lease because the McConnells are good people. They're a good family. They've done good things for Quincy. They're just good people, so we should just agree to it. And I would say if that's your thinking, and either positive or negative, that you should step out of the decision-making arena. What we need is an objective evaluation of the new lease and the current lease that's in place. We are going to be gone in 30 years, 50 years, 70 years. The words will survive. These words are going to live. They're going to be here. We need to read them, we need to understand them, and we need to decide whether or not it's really a good thing for Quincy. Now, looking at some of the wording in the lease, we have a lease, I call it the 2002 lease, which is the current lease that we're operating under versus the proposed lease. There are rents, the amount of rents that we're supposed to be paid that are set forth there. We get rents from the course fees, the rental course fees. We get rents from the service facilities. We're supposed to get now 10% of the golf course fees, which include the golf cart rentals. Under the new lease, we get 10% of the golf cart rentals. No, we get 10% of the fees, excluding the golf cart rentals. They're specifically excluded in this new lease. In addition to that, we get a reduction for collection of those fees. We get a reduction for paying compensation and commissions for membership consultants. I'm not sure why they're needed because I understand everybody wants to play there. But in any event, we are getting less in terms of the rentals for the course fees in the new lease. Not more, we're getting less. Now, in terms of the facilities fees, the description is about the same. We get 10% of the net, and the net includes a reduction for payroll, payroll benefits, utilities. There's 3 pages, and we gave to you Exhibit D from the 2002 lease that lists all the expenses that are taken out. So after all that's taken out, we get a 10%. And I'm assuming that the city knows all this because when they get their check, there should be this computation of amount, and they should know. So we get nothing in addition in this lease. 99 years the developers want. They want a number of other things that we'll go through later, and we get less in terms of rental. It's not a good deal for Quincy. And there's the permitted uses listed under both leases. You've got 2002, 2012. In 2002, we were supposed to get a golf course and a recreational complex. And in the 2002 lease, which is in place right now, we should have a recreational complex with opportunities for indoor and outdoor activities. And in this lease, and you should read it, the lease right now, we, the citizens of Quincy, should have swimming, volleyball, football, all sorts of other activities up there right now, which we don't have. 20 times in the 2002 lease is mentioned recreational complex. This new lease, not a sentence, not a word about the recreational complex. So the new lease, we lose a recreational complex, which of course we don't have yet, but we're waiting to get. So we don't get that. We get less in rental, less in activities. If you get to playing fields, we talked a little bit about that. 2002 lease, playing fields is defined in Exhibit A, and I believe you have that, as including soccer field, 4 diamonds, 4 diamond fields for the Little League, a nature trail, and an outdoor skating rink, if it's easily permitted. And the developers were told to design this, construct it, and maintain it, including parking facilities. If the developers now think that the parking facilities up at Granite Links need help, if anybody's driven to the baseball diamonds and parked up there, you can see what a disaster it is up there. That's a responsibility right now that Quarry Hills has, right now. That nature trail should be there right now. They are in default of this lease. The city of Quincy should be noticing them for default because the parking lot is awful, the design of the fields is bad, the lavatories or restrooms for these kids are abysmal. There's no nature trail. I went looking for it the other day, and there certainly was never any attempt to put in a skating rink. So right now, what do we have that's better for us in this lease? What? What is better for us? Sure, we get $800 and some thousand, that's great, but we don't get as much in rent. We're going to get less. We've lost all of these things. One of the clinchers, though, is the financial benefit to Quarry Hills. They can, under the present lease, assign as security their leasehold interest for anything. They can buy property in Florida, Indiana, Hawaii, and they can secure the lending for that with their leasehold interest in this property without the permission of Quincy. They were not allowed to do that in 2002. They could not do that in 2002. This is a tremendous financial benefit. They've got 99 years. Of course, if they ever default in year 70, the bank comes in, and there's a whole thing in here about what the bank gets to do. So what is better for us? We are giving them all of these things, and I'm not saying anybody's good or bad here, but you go to the negotiation table, and somebody wants 99 years, and they want this and they want that, and the other person who's got the power, because it's our land, you say, well, no, we're not willing to give you that, but we want this. Maybe we'll give you a year, you give us this. This is this lease. How can anybody read this and compare this to the 2002 lease and say this is good for Quincy, and not say to Quarry Hills, we want what we were supposed to get under that lease that they freely negotiated and signed? Thank you.
Understood. Maria Mulligan, I live on 21 Winthrop Avenue, Ward 3. I want to talk, I'm a lifelong resident of Quincy. I grew up here. My family is here. I want to talk to you tonight about the future, about how we might create a vision for Quarry Hills. We're all talking about this lease, this 100-year lease. I can't get beyond the fact of why are we even talking about a lease? We should be starting to talk about what is our vision for Quarry Hills going into the future. I mean, what we thought we were going to get, as we've been talking about, is this Quarry Lease recreational complex. This is what we thought we were going to get, and this is what the original city council approved. And if you look at it, there's all kinds of trails through it. There's more recreation. It was a complex for us. And as Jocelyn so eloquently stated, we don't have this. We want to get it back. Now is our chance to get it back. How do we do that, right? How do we do it? I want to call it, Quarry Hills Recreational Complex Part 2, right? Let's start with the purpose of the land. And I wish we could use our PowerPoint because I have some fantastic images for you. You do have it in front of you, and I hope that sometime in the future I'll be able to put it up on the screen for everybody else to see. But I took this map right off of the website. And what it shows is basically, it comes off the Massachusetts website, and it says open space by primary purpose. The pink area, which is all the golf course, all of our land, that primary purpose is recreation, okay? Recreation. And it's open space, it's green space, it's recreational space, and it's our space. Okay, please remember that. It's our space. It's not their space, okay? Let's move on. And we love our green space, and we need to stop trading it for commercial endeavors with the promise of some theoretical windfall. It's just foolish. What we do with this land is not something to be decided by a developer who happens to be the current renter. It's not their land, it's ours. Let's keep that in mind. So let's create a master plan to define the intent of future improvements before we lease an inch of this land to anybody. In that vein, we've created a master plan, and again, I wish I could show everybody. There's a master plan right in your packet that we worked on. And what we show is some pretty incredible concepts. We want the complex back. We want to connect the Quarry Historic Reservation with the sports fields, with the golf course. We want to be able to get from the clubhouse to Blue Hills through some kind of a nice trail. We want them all connected so they act like a complex. That's what we want. Why can't we get that? I ask you, why? Why can't we get that? It's beyond my comprehension. The last thing I want to talk about here is the redesign of the Retrudy Drive, the disaster Retrudy Drive, Willard Street intersection. And again, I have another great picture in here. And what it shows you is that we all know that that intersection is a disaster that needs to be fixed, right? But also was talking to the DCR, and we asked them, look, in addition to that, the whole Furnace Brook Rotary is a real barrier to us. If I want to, walk from Wollaston Beach to the Blue Hills, I can't do that. I can get up to the Rotary, and then there's a big X. I can't get beyond that. By foot, by bike, I can't do it. DCR has a master plan, and they want to reconnect this. So, in talking to them, I said, hey, these two are right next to each other. Why don't we figure out a way of solving all of it? Connect the Wollaston Beach all the way to the Blue Hills, and then make a right turn, and let's get up to Quarry Hills too. Working with Quinn Cycles on that as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. A master plan is where we should be starting. We shouldn't be starting with a lease. That's just foolish. I'm almost done. So once we sign a lease, we will have given away our open space. We will have given it away. So what's the rush? We have time. Let's take a year or two. Let's figure out what is the best thing to do up there for it's our space, our recreational needs. And we can do that through a steering committee. And we really, really want you to create a steering committee because we could really help. We've got some really smart people over here. And I'm an architect, we've got an engineer, we have a lawyer, we have a naturalist, we've got everybody. We want to be part of this solution, but we can't unless you make a steering committee and let us help you through this. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lori Earl. I live on 118 Billings Street, and I'm in Ward 6. And I thank all of you counselors for listening to all of these concerns. I appreciate it. I appreciate that you represent us and the concerns that we have as Quincy residents. I moved to Quincy in 2007 because my daughter had cancer, and we needed to live as close as we could to Dana-Farber and Boston Children's Hospital. We were only going to stay 1 year. That was in 2007, so we're still here. But all of that said, you know, there's some things that I just get pretty passionate about. I'm involved in Quincy Tree Alliance because I love trees, right? And open space is such an important concept. And open space only stays open as we leave it open. So there are 2 petitions that have been circulating through Quincy that are, one of them is, if you see it on the 8th piece of paper of your packet, I don't know how many pages that is in, but on the 8th piece of paper, it's here, and it's just a photocopy of the petitions. If anybody wants a copy of the petition at any point, please feel free to ask for one. And I want to read you a few of the comments that people made during the open comments section of that petition, and I raise your hand if I'm at my 4 minutes. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that I have that others have already commented on, but I really want to say to you counselors, who I assume and hope have read through the 22-page lease. The 2002 lease was 122 pages, so a lot of things have been taken out, and it would be really, really important for you folks to make sure you understand the things that have been detracted from that lease so that you know what permissions we're talking about when we're talking about this long lease that's being proposed. So these 2 petitions, one is about restoring walking trails that were in that original lease that were here before any development was in the Quarry Hills. And the other one is about a new visionary master plan for Quarry Hills. And again, it's time, you know, it's been 20 years since that lease was signed and the decision was made, and it's time to maybe look back again at that and say, is this still suiting the Quincy of today? Is this still suiting the climate expectations of today? And all of those issues that could come up. And so I'm asking you, in some years from now, with children and grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren, you're going to be maybe asked the question, you know, oh, you signed off on this development that is here, and you signed off on, and why didn't you protect, you know, the generations to come? Or did you protect? Are you proud of the lease that you signed on for? That you are the gap between the residents of the city and whatever development happens. So you have a really, really important role. In 99 years, will your descendants be proud of the fact that you put your name on as a supporter of the currently proposed lease, or the one that is adapted? So I did note, you know, the Patriot Ledger recent article quoted Tom O'Connell, president of Granite Links, as saying that the Quarry Hills Associates will remaster plan the entire site, which is exactly what we want. We want a master plan. He says, though, after the lease extension is approved. But you can't create a master plan after the fact. It has to be done beforehand. So let me just read a couple of quotes. Do I still have? Okay. Open space, so there was an open space to write in, we had over 400 respondents signed the petitions. We had 280 comments made on these petitions, and I imagine there might be more ahead. Some quotes: "Open space is limited and valuable in Quincy. It should be used for the greater good for all. Quincy has limited green space that should be thoughtfully preserved or developed with input from residents. My kids all played on the Quarry Hills soccer fields. I used to go running while they practiced. I kept looking for trails into the woods, but couldn't find them." Another person says, "If the COVID pandemic taught us anything, it's that the world needs more and better care for public recreational space for all to access, not just the privileged." Another comment: "Without a master plan for the area, there is no control over future development by other developers, which could turn the area into a big commercial nightmare." Let me just do one or two more here. One comment: "We already have so much commercial development in Quincy aimed at attracting visitors and short-term residents. The citizens who have lived here for years and want to continue living here are feeling ignored. None of the new developments around the city are aimed at long-term retention and happiness of residents. We don't need," they say, "another hotel. We need a public space where citizens can enjoy going outside and seeing their fellow Quincy neighbors." Let me just say this one, there's so many, 280 comments, there's some amazing ones. But let me just, this last one. "This company wants an extremely long lease. There is no hurry since they are not at the end of their current lease. They have failed to sufficiently advertise the small trail and have not maintained that trail. I believe there needs to be a long-term master plan with significant community input prior to a handing of a lease with unknown reasons for the lease. It's rumored that they want to build a hotel, but representatives are not upfront about that. Let them build a hotel on the land." They say you can't have trails near a golf course, but Ponkapog manages that just fine. "What is the hurry to give away Quincy land to a company that will not serve the bulk of Quincy residents and those who cannot afford to golf?" So, in conclusion, let me circle back to that first question. That day in the future when your kids or your neighbors' grandkids look back at the decision that you're being asked to evaluate right now, this is the time to protect our open land, to make the best choices we can for future generations, to provide the kind of access to the Blue Hills trails that we want our grandkids to walk on, to create the intended vision of an inviting and open recreational complex that will add to the quality of life for the residents, our children, and our children's children. Missing this moment now would be a lost opportunity we might never recover. We are asking the council to support a well-designed master plan developed through a fair steering committee, all done with transparency and openness, something that our city's residents can approve before a new extended lease is signed by this or any other development company. Thank you.
Why don't you just come up, just so I get an idea, because we're going to have to go to the council meeting at 7:30. I just want to get an idea on who's going to speak, positive or negative. Get up if you want to speak positive or negative. Go ahead, hon.
Thank you. Thank you, councilors, for taking the time to hear us. My name is Betty Lowe. I live at 140 Quincy Ave in Ward 2. I am a new homeowner in Quincy and wanted to address this body about these proposals for some of our open space that affect myself and my new neighbors. I want to turn your attention to the last 4 pages in the PowerPoint that was the printed out PowerPoints that were handed out to you, basically the purple pages that say oversight at the top. The first slide that I want to address is the home rule petition. Quarry Hills Associates are seeking through a home rule petition a 99-year lease extension on land that the city of Quincy currently leases to it. The fact that it is to be done through a home rule petition means that any changes to the lease of this 99-year lease will have to go through the same unwieldy process of going through the state legislature. This creates a lease of local open space that is virtually unchangeable by Quincy and Milton residents. We may compromise on the structure and the length of the lease extension, but to extend it through a home rule petition and thereby make it ironclad would make it so much more difficult for Quincy residents to address the various breaches that my neighbor Jocelyn has already mentioned, including the provision allowing Quarry Hills Associates the leasehold provision allowing Quarry Hills Associates to use this open space as collateral for commercial mortgages. We need to keep oversight of this lease within the city of Quincy and to keep the lessee, Quarry Hills Associates, accountable to its neighbors in Quincy and Milton, and to not extend the lease through a home rule petition. The next page that I want to point your attention to is the Quarry Hills Advisory Board. What was the Quarry Hills Advisory Board? The current lease requires an independent commission, the Quarry Hills Advisory Board. It was to consist of citizens, elected or appointed officials, and others as revised by the mayor from time to time. The board was responsible for overseeing audits, reviewing applications for permits, holding open meetings, and overseeing activities at the golf course, as well as other tasks. This is in paragraph 20 of the current 2002 lease. This body appears to have been dissolved. Why? This constitutes another default on the existing 2002 lease. The city of Quincy has not policed compliance with lease provisions, and it is presently unclear whose responsibility it is. We are calling on the city council to reestablish the Quarry Hills Advisory Board to take on these duties. And lastly, we are calling on the city council to establish a steering committee to oversee the execution of the playbook that was sent to you, that was sent to all of you by Maria. We are calling for the establishment of a Quarry Hills steering committee to oversee the execution of the playbook, develop detailed recommendations, and report to the city council for consideration to address the issues described therein. We are calling on city council to do its duty to Quincy residents, empower us to protect our open space, reestablish the advisory board per the existing 2002 lease, and require that Quarry Hills Associates include a provision in the new lease to establish a steering committee to execute the playbook. Thank you for your time.
I was just waiting. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Ann Meyerson. I live at 174 North Central Ave. And I heartily approve the fact that this body has decided that they are not ready yet to make a decision tonight, and that there is a lot more to think about, and I applaud that you have taken that step. But I want to ask even more, what's the rush? We have 22 years on our current lease, and what advantage can it possibly offer the city of Quincy to renegotiate so much earlier into that lease? 5 years till the lease runs out might be a reasonable time for any business and for city to plan. But could any of you walk back to your constituents and honestly say, oh, this is why it should be decided this year, with 22 years to go? I don't think we've ever been given a good reason why this has to happen now. I think there's plenty of opinions about where this suggestion came from, but what I want to ask is, can you explain to anyone why this needs to be done so far in advance? Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Judy Laird Jacobs, the Executive Director of the Friends of the Blue Hills, and I'd like to thank the City Councilors for your attention to increasing trail access to the Blue Hills for Quincy residents. I think we found out on the public tour that there is a trail that goes behind the developments eventually to the Blue Hills, but it wasn't maintained and there was poor signage. So it wasn't possible to find or follow the trail, and it wasn't really functioning as a trail. We appreciate Quarry Hills Associates' recent efforts to improve the wayfinding signage and appreciate all of your efforts to include trail maintenance and signage in the lease. But I think you saw on that tour that it's certainly, the current trail doesn't give Quincy residents the same sort of access and enjoyment that the trail in the original proposal would have provided. And as you've heard tonight, the trail is only one of many issues that Quincy residents care about in relation to the lease. And to address all of the concerns in a thorough manner, we encourage you to support the Quincy residents' request for a master plan and a steering committee. Thank you.
Folks, right at this point, I'm going to recess from the ordinance so that we can open up the city council meeting, but I'm going to come right back, so hang right there. Thank you.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, the regular scheduled Quincy City Council meeting Monday, February 13th, 2023. It is now 7:30 PM. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Counselor Kane. Present. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor Mahoney. Counselor McCarthy. Present. Counselor Phelan. Present. President DeBona.
Present.
8 members.
8 members, we have a quorum. Please stand if you can. If we can get a moment of silence, and please use it as you wish. Turn to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read the open meeting law.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Thank you. We're going to recess right now. The regular scheduled meeting will be right back into ordinance.
I'd like to bring the ordinance committee back here at 7:32 and open the public hearing up again. Good evening.
Hi, Ralph Marple, 100 Faxon Road, North Quincy. My only concern is you showed a map earlier, people from Granite Links, and a crosswalk going over the berries. I'd have a safety concern. There's some issues. If you go in behind Berry's Quarry to get back to the Blue Hills, there are some areas where it's very rocky, and there's actually holes and crevices you could fall into if you go in far enough. And then you hit a hill, it goes up, and it's hard to get around. And there's a lot of debris in there, beer bottles and stuff. Kids go in that area a lot. So I hope that's one of the issues that's going to be cleaned up. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
How you doing? Nate Marcheski, 162 Colonial Drive, Quincy. Thank you guys for your time and attention tonight. Appreciate it. As a resident of Quincy, I really do. I golf up at Granite Links all the time. I'm not a member, but as a member of the public, I go up and it is, public does have access to play up there. I do that all the time. I'm at the driving range. My wife and I, we're always at the restaurant. It's top-notch service, staff, just all around, it's a nice place for Quincy. And me and the people that I run around with, we're up there all the time. Like I said, not a lot of us are members, but we're still able to go up there and have a good time. We've had multiple events up there. My wife and I she had her bridal shower there last year. It was beautiful. Management, event staff, everything was top notch. And I just really don't have enough good things to say about it up there. So I think they've touched on some stuff that they could improve on. And, along with that, that's all I really have. But yeah, I'm in favor of the lease extension, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chrissy Brewster. I am a lifelong Quincy resident. I am a generational Quincy resident, and I would just like to say that I support the lease extension. As a lifelong Quincy resident, I would trust no other family than the O'Connell family to have that land for the next 99 years. What they've given to the city and what they do for the city is probably more than any other family in the city. They have the best intentions for the city, and I trust them, and they have my support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bill Zamzow, 356 Washington Street, Quincy. Dave, at the last meeting on this, hearing on this matter, I advised you that I would be filing an open meeting law complaint over the way that meeting was held. I then did file a complaint, and per my last exchange with the Assistant Attorney General handling my complaint, a review of it is still in process, and yet you still went ahead with holding this hearing. Do you know something I don't? Or should I now amend my complaint to include this meeting? Moving along. The lease extension. It is flawed, deeply flawed. For starters, it appears to basically be a request by the administration for an extension of the current lease, but including some goodies for Quarry Hills Association. Such is not warranted. Rather, all manner of things need to be fixed first before any lease proposal might then be considered by the council. As for just basic problems, they include concerns about the lessee's obligations to maintain the sports fields, provide hiking trail access and maintenance, and the like. Additionally, the sports field parking lot is woeful, if not also ADA 9 compliant. Be sure to note that just the slacking on these things alone could be viewed as material defaults on the lease. To this point, much of QHA's presentation tonight was discussion about how they plan to address these shortcomings, and that's just wrong. Attorney Sedney addressed a lot of particulars in terms of the lease and things that left out. The reality is, this body should be looking at pursuing default, not negotiating an agreement that benefits Quincy Hill Association. Other troubling concerns. The property tax on the course is based on a percent of revenue. However, there's been no audit of the books for years, nor any consequential presentation provided to the council of the net difference between the in lieu of tax approach and a regular property tax assessment. So much for trust but verify. Next, as near as I can tell, the rent paid for the use of 240 acres of city land looks to be covered via the percent of revenues cut, with the end result that taxpayers are seeing less to much less coming into the city coffers. It would be the case if that was just done per a standard property tax and ground lease agreement. In fact, per Quincy Hills Association's own presentation in numbers tonight, it's significantly less than what would be the case otherwise. I can appreciate the logic behind the original lease agreement, as the O'Connells were taking on a risk. However, times have changed and the course is flourishing. Further, published reports indicate that the O'Connells received $160 million in tipping fees for taking dirt for the Big Dig, whereas the course only cost around $50 million to build. Granted, the O'Connells surely incurred other extension expenses such as the sports field, but it would appear safe to assume that they ended up with the cost of the course fully covered, as well as perhaps as much as $50 million in the bank or thereabouts before taxes. Accordingly, if QHA wants a new lease, the council should strongly consider moving to a regular property tax assessing if it finds such in the public's taxpayers' best interest. If, however, given a proper review, the council finds a percentage of revenue in lieu of a better way to go, the council should insist upon its required approval of a separate and regular audit protocol. I would further recommend that such a agreement mandate both parties split the cost of the audits, as well as that the work be contracted out to the state auditor beforehand. The state auditor is expert at reviewing such public-private agreements. Its fees for such work are typically less to much less than private auditors, and the state auditor is unarguably impartial. Next up is traffic. While addressed earlier, access to the court, residences, sports field, and businesses are already a congested and dangerous nightmare given the woeful 93 Furnace Brook Willard Street interchange. It is thus utter insanity for the council to consider a lease extension so as to facilitate new development until hard and concrete, if not also concrete being poured, commitments by the state are in place to rebuild the interchange. Conversely, the administration's statement that such work is on some MassDOT priority list just doesn't cut it. In short, there's no valid reason whatsoever for quick approval of this lease extension anytime soon. In fact, I could see 3 to 5 years necessary just to get Quarry Hills Association compliant with the current lease. Not only does the lease have 22 years to go, current lending rates and loan terms have all but shut down real estate development. Throw in lingering COVID, supply chain issues, we're looking at many months to a couple of years more before spades might hit the ground. In short, marry in haste, repent in leisure. As such, the only proper course for the council to do is turn aside the current proposal, as well as advise the administration and QHA what sort of proper and detailed proposal the council might be willing to consider at some future date. Again, future is in 3 to 5 years once the current lease is in compliance. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Hello, good evening, city councilors. Thank you very much for holding this opportunity for some of us to hear more about the application for this proposal for the 99-year lease and have the lease explained a little bit more to us. My name is Marianne Balsamo, and I'm the third of 4 generations of Quincy residents. My thoughts are short and sweet. I'd like to point out that 2 years ago, we had more than 100 residents testifying to the need for a Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at this city council. And at that time, an ordinance was passed by a near majority of the city council members. I've wondered, and now 2.5 years later, with delays and lengthy deliberations, that still hasn't happened. Now, I'm not sure, but I'd like to know, why is there such a rush to say yes to this proposal for a 99-year lease that has such significant consequences? And can that be deliberated for at least as long a time period as the ordinance for the Department of Equity and Inclusion? Thank you.
Keith Johnson, 29 Sycamore Road, Ward 6. I'd like to speak in favor of the master plan. I think we do have time. I work on a lot of projects, and not here in Quincy, but in Cambridge and Boston. And a lot of times we have to put up escrow for things where we have to maintain a cap for 99 years or the life of the project. I think that's something that could be looked at here. I think we should consider it. I don't really know what the lease says, but it's something I use every day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Chevalier, 10 Hawthorne Street, Quincy, Massachusetts. I am for the lease. I think in the short time that they've had it, I think it's a great organization. I think they're awesome up there. I am for the lease, like I said, and I personally think I would like to see what they have to do and have to offer in the near future and distant future. Thank you.
John Rutherford, 62 Grand Wall Road. Thank you for having me tonight. One thing I would like to ask, I've heard tonight they're talking about the lease. The Blue Hills people got a copy of it. The city council's got a copy of that. Would someone post that on the website so like the people can have a copy of it? So this isn't really a negotiation between like, I don't really feel like I want the Blue Hills, Friends of Blue Hills people speaking for me. I'm speaking for myself. You know, so like this really shouldn't be settled by just, you know, the people representing the O'Connells and the people representing the Blue Hills. It should be, everyone should know what's going on, okay? So if there is a new lease, so like if I had saw the new lease, maybe one of the reasons that the lease is 20 pages instead of 100, maybe there's a smaller font, maybe there's less spacing. I don't know, but I would like to see the lease myself. It would be, you know, I would like to see some of that information. But other than that, I think this is I'm in favor of this project. One of the things that I think would be good is that this gives the, I heard other people speaking like, what is the rush? Why do we have to do this right now? Well, by doing this right now, it's going to give them the ability to invest even more. And so we'll be able to make even more money in the short term than have to wait like 22 years. So I'm hoping 10 years from now, there's all new stuff up there, and it's going to be a place where even more people are going to want to come to Quincy and go visit. I mean, right now, there's one restaurant up there. I look forward to maybe there being 2 or 3 restaurants up there. I mean, there needs to be places where people can enjoy themselves. Recreation is going golfing. Another thing I was thinking too, if anyone wants to walk around the golf course and stuff, maybe you guys can start something where you can have caddies. Carry the golf clubs, and you can walk through the golf course. I mean, that's about the only way that it's safe to walk through the golf course, because if you're walking through the golf course and you're not playing golf, you're going to get hit by a golf ball. I mean, you got to be paying attention to what's going on. I mean, I'm for the Blue Hills. I mean, I think maybe somewhere down like behind Airmont on the very beginning, maybe make another trail there that goes all the way to the other side. I do hope that if you do, if we extend this lease, that there's lots of parking. So if in the future, so the people from Quincy, if we do go up to the Quarry Hills, we can find some place to park. One of the problems with down Marina Bay is there's not much parking. So, this is a good thing for the people. It's a good thing for the city. I mean, you do have to keep an eye on them. I mean, one thing I would say that I would like to, again, I haven't seen the lease, so I can't really, I'm just making a guess, okay? But this is sort of like we're partners with them, so we're gonna get 10% of the profits. So the more profitable they are, the better it is for the city. The less profitable they are, the less it is. So, I'm not sure. The one thing I do worry about for the taxpayers is the water. I was researching water today in the city of Quincy, and we're one of the few cities that we have a flat rate on water for water and sewer. So no matter how much water a customer uses, whether it's a little or it's a lot, it's the flat rate. A lot of municipalities and cities and towns, it'd be nice that maybe if you looked into this and maybe did something in Quincy, it's a tiered system. So the people that use just a little bit of water, they're rewarded because they're paying a shorter rate. In Quincy, everyone pays the same rate for water. So, I mean, I just worry about like the water, because water prices could go up so much in the future that all the profits from the golf course are gonna get eaten up by water. So, but other than that, I don't see anyone behind me, and we can end this so no one else will have to speak, and I appreciate everyone, and I'm glad to see you, Councilman McCarthy. I missed you.
I like your comments except for that water thing. I'll take a beating at my house with that whole, we gotta talk, forget about that.
Exactly, but thank you.
All right, thanks, John. All right, folks, all great ideas, and Maria and company, thanks for the packet, and I know we'll talk. I want to thank Quarry Hills Associates for being here and realizing that they had some work to do up there. We went up on the walk, and they jumped right on it. I met with them a couple of times, and they got with DCR, and they're trying to make it all happen, so that component's done. I think there's a lot of good points that were made, though, to look back on when we talk about baseball and we talk about the other recreational facility type things that we might be able to do up there. So that'll end the public end of the meeting. I'm now going to turn it over to my counselors. I know that Councilor Yang had her hand up a second ago, and I'll turn it over to Councilor Yang, but thank you for your comments. I think it was very productive, and I'm glad we had a balance here, too, of concerns and a lot of positivity, too, for what has happened up there. Councilor Yang?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If folks will indulge me, I just want to share some thoughts, and then I do have some questions to follow up from today's presentation as well. I think it's important to just, first of all, express gratitude to everyone who's involved in this conversation. The City of Quincy, the Quarry Hills Associates, all the residents, Judy, representing Friends of the Blue Hills. And, I think it's important to express gratitude to all those parties because, as you can see from all the testimony here tonight, folks had talked about how long they've been in Quincy, their experience being here, what brought them here. So, I think it's a good point that, we are looking at a lease and that is all business, right? And in my experience, that's what it is. You have to put emotions aside and I respect that process. And I completely operate from that process, but I think it's also important for me to name the parties involved and just to start by saying that we are all residents of this city. Everyone, all of those parties that I just mentioned who are part of this process and part of this lease negotiation, we're all residents of Quincy. And I think it's important to call that out because we all are here in this room. We've had conversations the last however many months through emails, through phone calls, through in-person meetings. Thank you for inviting us to those, to the walkthroughs. We're all doing it coming from the same place. And you all know me, right? I'm really passionate about collaborative efforts. And so I think it's important to set the stage so you all know where I'm coming from. No matter what happens, again, I always like to default back to that to just remind us of what brings us here, right? Good, bad, everything between. The passion comes from the fact that we love the city we all call home. So I just want to start there with the baseline of what drives my work today. The other thing I want to do is just note that in those discussions that we've had, and there have been many, my takeaway really is a matter of how, right? How are we all going to move forward? It has to be together. And I think for me, the only way to start that first step is to essentially compile all of that information, right? Put it into a funnel and then put it out in a way that is streamlined and that we can all access and view so that we can all keep track of the updates, right? I love the PowerPoints. I appreciate all the emails. I mean, just up until 4 p.m. today, and that's because my printer ran out of paper, there were 30 emails that came through. And those are just emails, right? That doesn't include the petition comments and, again, the phone calls that came in, the in-person conversations, and all the notes. I mean, I was like feverishly writing. Like there's two full pages of just resident testimony here today, again, on both sides of the issue, right? And so I think it's important because there are so many folks who are invested in this to take all that information, put it all in one place so that we can all track how each of these items will be addressed, right? I think it's important that as we're going through them, people are here concerned for different reasons, and I think we should all be aware of the progress of how each of those, things are going to be addressed, right? And so, that's really what drove my conversation with the administration was to sit down and say, I would like to take the time from public feedback, from all of the feedback that's been given up until this point, from the walkthrough, again, from communicating with the Friends of the Blue Hills, from all this. I mean, there's so much information that we have here that's great information. Give us the time to compile it all in one place that we all have access to, that we can all track on all issues, right? On all sides. And so we can all just know what the next steps are moving forward, what the expectations are. We can all be on the same page. I think, again, the underlying notion here is that we're all invested, but there has to be a level of transparency and accountability, right? I'm not going to be here 99 years. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I used to, before Councilor Andronico was here, be the youngest one on the council, but we're not going to be here 99 years, right? Or 80 years or 70 years. And so it's important that whatever steps are taken, we remove, I mean, this contradicts what I was saying earlier, but in a practical application, we remove the people from this process and set up systems that are going to outlive all of us, right? So that whoever comes and looks at this 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, however many years from now, it's going to be the process that's reassuring on all sides of this, right? And not just the people. I mean, I know who I can call and talk to, but again, I'm not going to be here. So I want to set this up for success for everyone who is involved. And so, again, that drove my conversation with the administration to say, if we can take some time and work through this master list of addressing all of these issues, my hope is that we can all be on the same page with this negotiation. Again, in my experiences with lease negotiations, they've not been this extensive. They've been a lot smaller in space for, 1 to 2,000 square foot restaurants. But even in that process, again, what was always helpful to me is to have everything in one place. And so I'm really excited to finally have compiled all of that. I want to add the comments from the 2 handwritten notes I got from public comment today. So far from all of the comments, I've gotten 8 pages of essentially typed up notes that I'd love to address. I've already spoken with the O'Connells during our walkthrough, and they were happy and eager, and Ms. Sarianen as well, to say, let's start going through that list, right? Let's start, getting to work on addressing that list. And so I'm really excited and just grateful, Mr. Chairman, to you as well. I know coming into this meeting, there might have been a different sentiment, but, I know that you're on the same page in saying that we can all be on the same page with starting to address these issues on this list. And so I appreciate your indulgence and sort of what drives my sort of position on all of this and what I'd like to do for next steps. tomorrow's going to come, right? Things are going to happen. I want to see progress, but I want to make sure that we're all doing it together, but also understanding, again, where everyone's coming from. Again, PowerPoint's great, notes are great. Let's make sure we all have access to all the same information. That being said, I do have some questions that did come up from the presentation. If I can switch gears and go into the questions, Mr. Chairman?
Just, Counselor, I'm going to evoke Rule 10 with the 15 minutes, just so we keep everybody
Was my
at
rambling
bay.
pretty much the
And,
10 minutes? All right, I'll try to be,
you know-
I'll try to be brief with the questions then.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's, again, this is just logistics with some of the things that were mentioned here today. So the first one is enforcement. I just want to understand, and I don't know who from the team can answer this, but when it comes to enforcement, I just want to have an understanding of making sure that it's very clear in the lease that who are the responsible parties on both sides of the conversation, from the city of Quincy, what you can expect from us. And again, not people, right, but departments. Is it inspectional services? Is it the Natural Resources Department? Is it DPW? For all of the things that are brought up in the lease, I think it's important for this go around to, again, just establish very clearly who are the responsible parties for enforcement, but also for folks following up, right? Again, if I get a question or a concern, I know who I can call, like specifically looking out, I know who I can call, but in 50, 60 years from now, right, let's remove the names and say, okay, this person can call this person if there's an issue up there. So just having that language in the lease to, again, very clearly define what department or what appointed position or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Like what position of each from the city of Quincy and from your end would be responsible for any issues or questions or concerns that come up, and then also the enforcement side of it. The other thing I had wanted to know too is when it comes to the rent and other payments, so again, I'm just speaking off of experience, so if you folks can sort of educate me on why or why not, that would be helpful. But when it comes to lease agreements, I've always come across leases in the past where we've agreed to percentage rent. And when I say percentage rent, I mean there's a baseline rent and then percentage rent on top of that, right? And that way there's always a guarantee that, knock on wood, if something, none of us want anything to go sideways, but God forbid it does, we at least as the folks who are leasing out, we always have a baseline that we're starting with that we know we're going to get in as revenue for rent on top of whatever the percentage is. Right now, to my understanding, it's just the percentage and not a consistent base underneath that. And so that's something I'd want to see if we can consider and talk through as well. And then the third piece, and this is my final piece, Mr. Chairman, is the lease term. So again, I've seen leases in the past that I've come across where you have options, right? And so, for example, again, speaking, like if we sign into a lease for a restaurant, you'd say, okay, you're signing 30 years with 2 options to renew, right? So one option for a 10-year, another option for a 5-year, but that gives us, the renters, that gave us an opportunity to also go back to the drawing board on our end if we weren't happy with, let's say, the percentage rent, right? Like the percentage rent we agreed to isn't working for our business anymore. And I know in 15 years I can adjust that should I choose to continue to take up the option the first time around as well as the second time around. And again, I think that's beneficial for both parties, right? It's good for the city to reevaluate, but it's also good for those who are renting to see, is the agreement that you agreed to still working for you as well to be successful as a business? So those are the 3 things just off the top of my head from tonight's presentation that I would love to open dialogue about and talk through and see what's possible. But I will also make sure to get to you, because I know you've been waiting for it, so thank you for your patience. I will make sure to also get you the list of the compiled notes, and I'd love to share that with residents too. And going back to my earlier statement today, just make sure that we're all on the same page with all of these questions. So that's it for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Down here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to everyone that's come out tonight. I've known over the last few weeks, you guys have reached out to us. I had a lot of great information sitting down with you folks the other day. We'll get into some of the things that the folks have talked about a little bit. Traffic concerns, ball fields, trails, the funding source here. Just looking back a little bit on time here, I see that there's a nice presentation here from you folks about putting some trails in and putting some signage in. Is that correct? Does that look like something we're looking to do, and you have a timeline on it? I think one of the biggest factors here is the traffic concerns. It's dangerous up there. I think if we had a vote tonight on if we thought this was a dangerous intersection down at the bottom, I think everybody would say, I'd say close to 90% would say yes. I see a lot of shake, yeah. It's a dangerous intersection down there. I don't know how any investor is going to come in without that intersection being mitigated. I've been speaking with State Representative Bruce Ayers over the last year, I guess I could say. He's talked to Senator Keenan about the state side. I think he's had conversations with Solicitor Timmons, is that correct, Solicitor, over the years? And Allison Rule, part of the Traffic Parking Alarm and Lighting Division. It really comes down to, are we going to wait around for the state to pick up the pieces here? Is the city going to wait around for the state to do it? Or is the city going to get involved? Or is the stakeholders here going to get involved? I think this pertains really to Mr. Timmons, Solicitor, if you could. Is there any type of information that you have that you could elaborate on how we can mitigate the traffic on a short-term fix and then a long-term fix? And who does the jurisdiction fall under? Do we have to get authorization from the state? Or can we get involved? Or where are we as of today?
Well, certainly, even Mr. Chairman and members of the council. There's a distinction between the land that is the subject of this lease and then the area you're talking about, which is at the bottom of Shooty Drive. And I know you understand that because we talked about that. And in the meeting with Senator Keenan and Representative Ayers, they've been working hard with Mass DOT to look at funding. Concurrent with that work, our TPAL division, and in particular our traffic engineer, has been working with Mass DOT on a plan to address that intersection because the Raschuti Drive, whatever that off-ramp is called, I don't know that it's a continuation of Willard. I know parts of it are a little further past, but at the bottom of Raschuti Drive, that intersection is now one of the top 5 most dangerous in the state, statistically. So because of that, now Senator Keenan and Representative Ayers have something to go to DOT and others, administration and finance on the executive level, to pursue funding, and that's what they're doing. So there are plans that are underway. The city traffic engineer is working, with Mass DOT. It's slow working with them because that one agency has to cover the entire state. We're doing other projects with them that I've been involved with, and they're earnest and attentive, but there are issues that relate to the fact that it's an agency serving the entire state. But the current plan is a red light at that intersection. The reason for that is they're able to do something like that. You have to keep in mind that one of the feeders to that area is an off-ramp from the highway. So there are traffic standards that apply to stopping traffic that's on an off-ramp. I know that I was going over to Charlestown fairly regularly when our daughter lived there, and there's an off-ramp off of 93 that backs up all the time. It's ridiculous. It's a stop sign at the bottom of the, and others may be familiar with that. Well, now we're going to introduce a stop sign there. Well, a red light there. One of the reasons we can do that is because of the development of, computer-assisted, whatever the word would be, that, it works with the signalization to determine when there's backups. And the other thing is that ramp, when it was designed to accommodate longer than normal traffic queue because all the trucks were coming, you may recall, from the Big Dig with the slurry at night. So the combination of those factors, the longer ramp and the high traffic accident count, have generated interest on the part of the city, the state rather, and they're very receptive to putting in a red light. Part of what happened when the city was looking at doing work there is there's privately owned land at the bottom of Raschuti Drive on both sides. And so there were issues with that and issues with the topography. So it looks like the red light is going to be the primary fix right now. A more longer-term one, one of the speakers talked about, the geographic characteristics of the Furnace Brook Rotary. So, there are dynamics here that are present that somewhat limit the options. But it is being worked on. It's expected that the red light is going to be very helpful. I'm not sure about the timing on the red light, nor was Senator Keenan and Representative Ayers, but they're committed to that, and they've been very involved in working with our engineering department and then, keeping in touch with the administration on this.
Thank you, Solicitor Timmons. I appreciate that. I hope we can get a timeline on that eventually. I'm going to get a little bit into the funding part of this. Is this correct here? 2022, we had $825,841. Is that the amount that has been, okay. It looks like it's climbing, which is great. Hopefully, we can get to $1 million. I think this is a question for Madam Auditor, through you, through Mr. Chairman, if I could. How does this funding work? Where does this 825,841 go into? What fund? What's the percentages? And is it getting allocated back to the maintenance side of it, I guess I could say?
Okay. Yes, Councilor. So I believe the presentation that was given by Quarry Hills shows the revenue received by calendar year. When we book the revenue, we're booking it by fiscal year. So my numbers will be a little bit different than theirs because the fiscal year is starting in July. So for an example, when the revenue does come in each quarter, what happens is 10% of it goes into a particular fund for Quarry Hills oversight. 50% of it goes into a fund for DPW enhancement, and then the remaining 40% goes directly into the general fund. Prior to 2008, there was another fund that 40% went into, but back in, I think it happened in 2008, 2009, there was a vote by the council then to reallocate that money so it goes into the general fund. And then that drops in as our revenue each year.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. I just wanted to get a correct understanding that all of us are on the same page with how this funding works. It's been some time now. Really, at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is making sure that there's allocation in there, that this funding that's being created and the revenues are going towards the mitigations of all these particular situations we have here, going towards Quarry Hills, the entire operation / maintenance of what was going on. The ball fields, last year was my first year of my little boy doing junior farm. We played 9-year-old baseball up there with Mr. Perdios and Dave Murphy and the gang and a lot of folks. Every time I would cross that intersection with him in the back seat, I was always a little hesitant upon getting in a particular accident. And then, you're going to a game at 5:45 p.m. You're trying to get across there to do some BP and do some throwing before the game, and it's a lot of traffic down there at 5:15 to try to get across there. And you're in underneath that bypass for at least 10 minutes trying to get across. And if I'm dealing with it, think about every other parent that's dealing with it trying to come up there, as well as the folks that want to use the driving range and all the different, functions that you're having up there. You're all competing, and then the folks that live up there. So you're all competing to get across that intersection, which is not even straight across. It's at like this weird 45-degree angle, which is so dangerous. The oncoming traffic is coming on. At the end of the day, and that's why I brought Solicitor Timmons up, that this has to be mitigated. A short-term fix with the light may be a solution for right now, but in the near future, we have to have a long-term fix. But time is of the essence. We're going to sit up here I just signed him up for this year, Cal Ripken Miners. He's going to do that as well. And that's going to start pretty soon. We get into April, May, June, and then they have the situation over the summer with all the different activities. But listen, at the end of the day, I attended a nice wedding up there this summer. It was beautiful, looking on the course. It was like an afternoon Saturday wedding. Beautiful, beautiful setup. And I hope to continue that you guys be successful and do welly things up there. But there's also the residents that want some of these conditions and terms and things that they all put in these packets. And I would have to concur with them, because these are things that were installed from 20 years ago, and now you're coming up with a 99-year lease that you want an extension of, and then some of the things have not been really taken care of. The ball fields, the drainage is in terrible shape. The lighting, we got the lighting, I think, from the CPC, because I'm on that board, and they came in to ask for the funding that way. The city has come into some skin in the game with that, but the stakeholders have to come to the table too. It's a combination of things, and some of the funding that we talked about has to be allocated towards this mitigation of the fields, of the traffic, of the trails, of the signage, of all these things that, you know, everybody has a little piece of what they kind of want or need. And I want you guys to be successful too. I really do. There's some people coming in here with pros saying they have a great time up there, and I think your functions you have up there on both underneath the tent and inside the facility are fantastic, state of the art, not only for the residents of the city, for outside, but I attended the meeting with Councilor Palmucci in the back there in September. There he is. How you doing, Councilor? Judge Palmucci. And we talked about the vision of Quarry Hills, and I see the vision, and I want you to succeed. I want to be able to say, yeah, I live in Quincy. Did you go up to Granite Lakes? Did you go up to Quarry Hills? Did you see how beautiful it is? Yeah, I want to do that, just like we do right outside here today, when we talk about the Adams Hancock Common during the winter lights and you know, the Christmas lights and everything that's out there. We want to do that for you guys too. But you also want to say, well, guess what? We also take care of the residents that are here and the people that want to visit here. We do this, look at these beautiful trails, look at all the signage that we have up here. Look at the ball fields, look how beautiful condition they're in. Traffic's mitigated. Yeah, we had issues before. These are all the things that are on the table for the lease. I spoke with them, I said, there's got to be a compromise here. If these come to the table and they're willing to do all these things and get it up to par, then maybe the lease is a good idea. Maybe this is the deal, you know? So I think at the end of the day, I know there's no vote up here tonight, but we all have to work together. City has to work with the stakeholders, with the state, with the mitigation of the traffic. You guys have to work with the residents and us. If we all can work together here, get the common goal, we all benefit. So I just feel that I'm glad that Chairman McCarthy had open forum tonight, which has allowed the public to get their input. I like the fact that there was a lot of different eyes, a lot of different, you know, we had a lot of different folks out here. We had attorneys, we had our environmentalists, we had different people that see a little differently, a new set of eyes to look at some of these things. I know you want to work with them too, and you want to work with us. So at the end of the day, if we can get to a compromise and get this up and running, I think it will be great for the city of Quincy. But I think it starts with the traffic mitigation down at the bottom to get folks in and out of there safely, whether they want to visit or do the attractions that are up there. But I appreciate everybody coming here tonight and getting to a consensus that we're all on the same page with everything. So that's my comments for tonight. I hope that these things will be resolved and we can come to a conclusion and a vote down the road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Chair recognizes Counselor Andronico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully you don't have to exercise Rule 10 on me. I hope not. I just want to say thank you to everyone that came out tonight to listen to public comment, to give public comment. I know it was a little easier maybe when it was on Zoom, but to come out in person and voice your opinion and stick around for the entire thing is a testament to how much you all care about the issue that's before us tonight. I'll keep my comments brief. Just a couple things that have not been brought up by councilors to this point. I know we talked about traffic, we talked about the ball fields. We did not talk about the traffic leading up to the ball fields after you turn off the drive, go up the hill a little bit. That has been, it's a steep hill going up. It's pretty narrow, and at a certain point, once you reach just about at the top, you can't really see if anyone's coming in the other direction, whether you're going down or going up. It's been like that since I was 9, 10 years old using those ball fields. I've played plenty of games up there, and it hasn't changed in the 20 years that have passed in the time since. So I'd like to see that addressed to some extent. And separately, it was mentioned a few times with public comment, there's 20-something years left on the lease, why now? And I think a few of my constituents at least have reached out and are a little curious, why at this point, and, I don't have a lot to give them. I understand that there's a process in place. Well, we can't fully finalize things or really get the ball rolling until we have, a certain number of years so we can get funding to do certain things. But at the same time, I find it difficult to believe that certain conversations maybe haven't taken place, because otherwise I wouldn't really fully understand why we're doing this and discussing a long-term lease extension. So I think maybe next time or just in the weeks ahead, I'd like to just kind of get a little more information. And I think that's what the public's asking for too. I'm not asking at this point for finalized plans. I think that would be a little too ambitious, but just I think a little bit more information will go a long way. And I do want to commend QHA for taking the time to listen to public comment, to go out on trail walks, to address the signage issue, in the beginning stages. But you've been a willing partner, for a long time, and I do appreciate you being willing to listen and work with the community to address the concerns that they have all raised and that we're raising throughout the process. We haven't had a good public discussion like this in a while. It's good to get back into it, but thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Counsel. Chair recognizes Counsel Phelan and Counsel Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Make a couple of comments and then go into some questions. I have a unique setting, although it was 25 years between the time I went back on the city council, where I was here in 1994 when the original lease came up. And some of the comments that have been brought up, some meetings I've had with some neighbors who have brought up some of the issues. To start off in '96, the city's dump was closed. It was capped with a clay cap. I think understanding what was there before is good for everyone. There was a clay cap there. And in some years, up till '96, when we turned this over, the city paid up to close to $1.2 million to re-put the cap on and everything. And then it was actually me and Peter Colson that went to a thing down in Washington about how to reuse landfills. And one of the things we came back with was Lansing, Michigan, a city outside of Detroit, Michigan, came up with the idea that they were putting in golf courses and reusing them for like ski. And so that was a driving force with the city council. I think our vision was to have things like these trails all put together. There was a vision that we wanted to see a lot of things done up there for it to be both a profitable endeavor, so we could continue to enjoy it, and the public would enjoy it, which a lot of that stuff has been done. And I see with Quarry Hills, they have done a lot to fix the place up and everything like that. But I think there's also a lot of other things that we were looking for. The good news is when Quarry Hills took it over, we had some years where we had $2 million in free cash, and we spent almost $1 million on doing the cap. That was when the budget of the city of Quincy was at $96 million. So it was a huge drain. In '90, we laid off 20 firefighters, more than 50 teachers. We were in severe financial difficulty. And in '96, when we started getting the big dig dirt and Quarry Hills took over, it also came into a point where we were no longer paying money. We could put the money back to where it needed to be, in the schools, with the police, with the fire, with very city services. And there was a tipping fee that came in. Part of it was put into the development of the golf course. The other part went to the city. So we went from a really negative cash flow and we turned it completely around the other way. So there's a lot of good things that have happened, but also in that lease, there were things like we wanted the ball fields.
When I did that walkthrough back in December, I was actually kind of disappointed that I saw some things from those original leases that basically hadn't been done. Part of it, there was a DEP decision that no one really knew about. It kind of sat there for a while. And the original vision was for those trails to be connected together. That was, I can speak for most of the councils who were on the council at that time. That was what we were expecting. We were expecting the ball fields. I coached on those ball fields for 5 years in junior farm, and there are problems on there. The drainage has never worked. I always had 2 bags of quick dry in the back of my trunk. I would get there a couple hours early just to dry out the fields so the kids could play and they wouldn't be. So that was kind of disappointing that hadn't been done. And there's a couple other things, and I know Quarry Hills is working on it. They made it in the presentation. But I think that's something that should definitely be fixed. It was something that was promised back then. And the other thing with the fields and everything, which are all, I know where they're working on it now and they're working with the Friends of the Blue Hills, but that was part of the original vision. That was definitely part of the original vision that was voted on by then Mayor Sheets and the city council, and then later in 2002 with Mayor Phelan and the city council. So they were both issues that we want. One of the things that came up tonight, and a couple of things that people have talked to me about, is accountability on this. And one of the things I remember in the original leases, and I've gone back and read most of them, some of them are pretty confusing, and I gotta be honest with you, I was blurry-eyed after reading some of it, was about audits being done, and people looking into that money's coming in. Now, I know from my auditor that payments are being made and everything like that, but part of it was that there would be regular audits of the books, and that was part of the lease, if I'm not mistaken, also put it on it would have to be paid by basically Quarry Hills, and the city would hire an outside independent auditor. Now, I believe some of it has gone with Powers and Sullivan. I know at one point there was the DePisa Accounting was doing some of the work on it. But I would ask the question, and I think if we're going further with the long-term lease, that has to be something that's in there, that items that are put in this lease are completed, and that there's some accountability. So I guess I would ask that question to the executive secretary, or now we call him chief of staff, or we used to call him executive secretary. Since I'm going back 25 years, I'll go back to what we called him back then. What is the status with the audits on Quarry Hills?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, Counselor, the accounts are audited as part of our annual city audit by Powers and Sullivan every year. We have used different firms from time to time. We have engaged Powers and Sullivan to do a more detailed dive into the accounts, anticipating these questions as part of this process. So that process is ongoing. We expect to have a full audit ready for this body in the relatively near future.
Thank you. I would like to see some of if we have the past audits and stuff like that. I'm sure most of the councilors would like availability of that, because I think some of the things that I'm hearing out there is credibility and whether these things, I believe they're being done, but I guess when you're doing a long-term lease, the devil's in the details. And if we're going to be putting a long-term lease like this, we should be able to put our hands on these things pretty easily and know exactly what's coming in, what the revenue streams are, because we're also, and I'm sure most of it's correct, our auditor is confirming that the money is coming in and everything is coming in. So I believe that's happening. But I think we need better control on what's coming in the audits, and we need to see that it's going to happen. So I would request that through you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, I would say to all the councils, I'm sure they would want to see it too. But I think that's a very important part, and I know in the original lease when it was done, there was quite a bit of discussion on that. And I remember the original lease came in 93, we didn't pass it till 94, because there was a lot of discussion, a lot of meetings on it. And I think that's something that needs to work out. I think there are issues that were brought up tonight that we've seen, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for, letting the public speak and bringing them in for this Q&A session. I think it's very helpful to hear, and I thank everyone for coming out. Obviously, they care a lot about the area and a lot about this city. So I think we do have a chance, and I would like to see, there's a vision that I think these trails should have been hooked together, and I believe that was something. And if it takes going on city property or using state property, I think we should be part of that to make sure that vision actually comes to fruition. So I guess we're not voting on it tonight, so I'm coming near the end of my time. And those are the things I'm like, different points that came up. I'm going to take the accountability point and say that we should have that, and we should be able to get that material when we need to look at it. So anyone, even going into the future, not saying we're doing this, but if we are, that things that are put in the lease and said that should be happening, there has to be a mechanism to make sure it happens, and there has to be an accountability that it's going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm going to go, Mr. Mahoney. Chair,
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much. I want to also thank you for having the public forum tonight. It was important, and I think it was very valuable. I think we learned a lot when we went on the walk, and I think we learned even more tonight from the incredible presentation that the public put together. And I think we can only benefit from that in the long run so that we can all work together as partners. So I wanted to start by saying that. I think, though, the one thing that I will say is that this was introduced, and it was introduced as a red-lined lease that was pretty much told all the, prior stuff was going to be taken out, and, basically, all the capping and all that stuff was going to be taken out, and we were kind of moving fast at that time. We asked to go for the walk, and I think we should have to take a giant step backwards here, because some of the stuff that Councilor Phelan just brought up, I've also brought up in the list that I had sent over to Mr. Walker. We need to see that audit. We need to see how the monies are coming in. We should have been looking at that through the lease, but we haven't seen that comparison. So I'm glad to hear that Powers and Sullivan's done that. I would have thought that that would have been provided to us, and I guess I'm going to ask, who was the main team for the city in negotiating the revisions to this list, this lease? Maybe through Mr. Walker?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this would be the city's legal staff and the mayor's office.
Okay. And was there did we hire an outside auditor to take a look at the numbers before we put the lease, before we made agreements to the lease?
No.
So that was something that we did only after we had this meeting and after we had the questions that came in?
I would say concurrently. No, it was part of the discussion that we would have to do that as part of this.
Okay, but it was presented to us up here in the council, and it hadn't been, it's since the first meeting.
It's just not done yet.
So my concern is, though, that we were kind of, there was a push in a sense that we were saying, and I'm not the one saying this, that we were going to be potentially voting on this tonight if we had all our questions answered. I'm glad we're not. But I'm strictly saying that there's a lot more conversations that have to happen. And because there was the dissolving of the steering committee that was part of the original lease, we don't really have an understanding of some of the things that are happening. And through that walkthrough that we went through, what I can tell you is that in the pictures that we do have here, and I do appreciate it, I think it's a huge improvement, but some of the areas that we walked through, there was like to walk into the area that before you even get to the apartments, before you're walking in between the apartments, there are open kind of generators, and it's just not very pretty. It's not a very pretty thing to look at. So I think there's some still work that we have to do in that particular case up there. But also when you get down into the ball fields, and I'm not going to go on about this, but in the ball fields, the parking lot, the roots of the trees are tearing up the ballpark parking lots, and that's something that should be maintained. Those ball fields are still being used. And right now, they're gated off, because I think the kids do go up there and do, donuts, but that needs to be maintained up there as well. But the parking lot's in terrible, terrible condition. And I did ask Mr. Walker before we started the meeting if he had seen it. He said he's going to go up and take a look at it, because it's in bad shape. And it was mentioned in the presentation from Quincy residents. So I asked him my questions. One of the questions that I asked is, when did that team of people that were put together, when did it dissolve? Because it is part of the lease, and the original lease. And if we took that giant step backwards, like I said, what we could look at is, the audit, and then also take a look at some of the things that we do have, what we don't have, before we go into looking at what the new lease is going to do. Because I think we have to have a full understanding of where we are today after 28 years, where you're going to go for the next 22 years, and then potentially what that master plan is as we regroup and potentially, hopefully, set up that steering committee so that we can all work together. I don't see this as a rush because we don't have the solutions to how we're going to be able to solve the very thing that is the biggest problem. It's a problem for residents that want to go to the ballparks. It's a problem for residents that want to go to the Blue Hills. It's a problem for residents that want to go to Granite Links, and that is Rashidi Drive at the end, and that in the very MDC piece where we're talking about the exit ramp. And there is also talk about the Furnace Brook Rotary. So those things are not even, they're at 25% design at the state, and you can say that we're going to rush it through and put a light at the bottom, and it's going to solve all problems, but that's not going to solve the problems. I don't want to put a Band-Aid at the bottom of the hill and call it a solution. I don't think that's something that, QHA wants either. I think we want this thing to be something that we can collaboratively work together to solve so that when we have that master plan, when we get to the point where we negotiate all of the language that's in the lease that's been provided to us, to make sure that we're protecting our taxpayers and collecting the right amount of fees, that we can get to that working relationship, to maybe when we can get to a decision of what the length is for the lease, that we have those things solved. But we are not anywhere near any of those things. And I'm concerned about that because, it's the next steps of where we're going. And I hope that those things that we talked about at the beginning, we'll be able to form some of those types of committees, like a financial committee, a master plan committee, a steering committee, a comparison of 2002 lease to 2023's lease, so we can go through it. We should be going through this lease line item by line item in public so that we can understand what is being taken out and what is being put in and what's the benefit to the city of Quincy and how we can move forward. And those are the types of things that I would expect that would be in our presentation. I appreciate Corey Hill's presentation, their update, which was specific to the trails and our public meeting that we had. But there are so many other pieces to this that we have to discuss. And I look forward to those conversations. One thing that I got while we were sitting here, and I think it's interesting because as we sit here, we got tons and tons, I can attest to all of the counselors up here, with paper, like tons of stuff that came in that, this presentations were coming in left and right, and they were detailed and they were heavy, which was great. But I also got a question from the Quincy Public Schools, and whether or not you had met with the athletic director, Kevin Mahoney. Not my husband. I am married to a Kevin Mahoney. This Kevin Mahoney is much younger, and he is the athletic director. Whether or not you had met with Kevin Mahoney to discuss North Quincy High School and Quincy High School boys and girls youth golf. Because I think they have a lot of problems being able to get time and tee time and also driving range time at Quarry Hills. And I think they're just looking to have that collaborative discussion. I said in the lease, there is a part in the lease where it says that I think Quarry Hills will have 5 different functions that we can have, the city of Quincy can have up there. Maybe that's one of the functions. I don't know, but that's something that I think the athletic director is looking to talk to you. And I said, I'm sure that QHA would probably want to talk to them. But at the same time, there are a lot of other things too. There was a lot of great conversations that came from the public, but I'm going to leave this with, that financial audit is a key to any discussion before anybody, any good business person would want to have that financial audit done before they even started to even entertain putting a red line lease in front of anybody. So the fact that we haven't got that done yet and we're working on it concurrently concerns me, because how did you get to these numbers that we say we're bringing in enough money for the residents of the city of Quincy, and that it would be able to do so in the long term? The last thing I'll say is, one of the questions I didn't ask, which I know somebody in the audience brought it up, but I didn't ask about water. So I think one of the things that we'd want to know too is just an audit on the water use that we have up there. But finally, the pieces that I'd say is, when we walk through, I went for a walk through to kind of see how you could tie into, I don't know if it was Barry's, when you're tying into into Blue Hills, but it is very dangerous over there. I think there was a gentleman that got up and said it's very dangerous. It's littered with, it's definitely a place where kids are going up to party, and there's a combination of efforts that we have to get that back into shape, that it would be deserving of calling it a trail. And then where I entered out, and I might be in the wrong place, but it entered out into a neighborhood. It's not a trail if you're in a neighborhood. If you're walking down, let's just say if we decided to take 50 people for a trail walk and you're walking down a street in a neighborhood, it's not a trail. You have to walk down a street. I think it's I'm not going to remember the name of the street, but you have to walk down the street and then hook a right to be able to go back into the Blue Hills, unless I'm going the wrong way, which I could very well be going the wrong way, but I think that is a concern as well. So there's a lot of work, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, but I believe that this is the beginning of that dialogue. And I think when we work together in a community and listen to what the community is looking for and what the goals are, and I will say one last thing. I've asked for it through President DeBona when he was acting as the Ward 4 counselor. I asked for it from this committee. I've asked for it when we were here the last time. There was a presentation. Ward 4 Councilor Brian Pamucci had a presentation. There was design plans that were presented out to the public at a public meeting. Those design plans showcased a hotel. We should also have access, as counselors who are discussing a lease, a 99-year lease, we should have access to those very public displays that were done in public. Those should be presented to us. We've asked for those things, and they should be presented to us. It's an opportunity to discuss what your future plans are for potential future plans. It doesn't mean that that's what you're actually going to, maybe it's not going to be the very thing that you do, but if it's something you're presenting to our neighborhood in Ward 4, then it should be something that you're willing to present to the whole city. Because this is not going to just be impacting Ward 4. This is going to impact our whole city. So we have to be extremely careful about how we proceed and make sure that we're being extremely transparent and have those discussions and be open with each other and make sure that when we're negotiating this lease, it's something that's not only fair to QHA, because it sounds like that's something that you guys already came to the table with the administration, but extremely fair to the taxpayers of the city. Because we don't get to open up that book again and change that. And right now, I'm concerned about some of the things that are in there. And I know we'll get to those discussions, but I strongly suggest we break this out and create that steering committee and start having those conversations and share those auditing materials that Mr. Walker suggested that he has, and then also give us a timeline as to when we're going to be able to see the audit materials that we just hired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Mahoney. Chair recognizes Councilor Harris.
Thank you, and through you, Chairman McCarthy. Chuck, can I ask you a question? You were part of that original, the original lease. Wasn't there a committee, and I heard something about it when I met with some of the folks, wasn't there a committee where there were elected officials, people from the communities, supposed to be on this?
Back then, there was.
There was. So at one point, obviously, and it's very common, change of leaderships, whether it be, especially in the elected field, even in our day-to-day jobs, we have a different boss. One boss thinks about what's important, the other boss doesn't think it's as important. If something slides through the weeds, and all of a sudden it's a problem later on. The conditions that I saw on those trails that were just, not seen. I believe that in this, if this is to go forward, I would like to see that committee be brought back, because this land is the people's land, and the people should have a voice about that land and what's going on it. And as with respect to the 99, because a lot of the concerns that I've had to address is the 99 years. Well, and how some things have maybe slipped through the cracks that were agreed to. I think to assure that group is together, because I think if that group was here today, still in place, we wouldn't have had, we would have had maybe less people here, if not any, because things wouldn't have been in the shape it is in today. So I think that we need to assure that takes place and is in place. That's just my opinion. And when it comes to, the checks and balances, and everybody's made great points, both sides, great presentation. It's an exciting project to see happen. There's no doubt. But I believe that every 15 years, there should be, through that committee that's set up, a checks and balance that we don't have things falling through the cracks. That lease, so I was first thinking every 25 years, but we're at that 25-year mark, a little over now, and I think maybe that's too long. So I was thinking about, so there'll be, in that 99 years, that different generations will be addressing Quarry Hills in that area. And especially, and I think that the Ward 4 councilor should be on that. We should, on that, as well as either the president or the at-large councilors who speak more to the community that's there, more than a Ward 6 councilor would on the other side of the world. I believe that we should, I believe that we should also invite our friends from Milton to be able to be very much part of it, because I myself would rather, as a official here, as a representative of the people, I wish that some of our other neighbors to the north of us were better neighbors as far as handling issues like this, whether, which something we're putting in place is affecting another community. So that's basically, and there's one other question that was asked, was there used to, and I believe it was Councilor Mahoney mentioned the youth golf, but also the senior proms used to be there, and it didn't happen this year, I believe, and it usually did. I'd really like to see that something would be in place, because that I'm not privy to it. I just heard it last minute before I came here. I believe the senior proms used to happen there, and they didn't this year. So I would like to see, hope that, there'd be a consideration of putting something in there that we can at least, because I have to tell you, it's to echo Councilor DeBona, the venue there is incredible, and there's no better way for our kids who are leaving high school, going into the world, have a night out like that to start off their future going into college and moving on. So I'd like to see that take place if we can too. And that would be part of some sort of community, community commitment that I'd like to see take place and be put into place. So with that, thank you, and thank you everybody for attending tonight.
Thank you, Counselor. No go backs. Okay. A lot of good information, and a lot of information that dug into the lease itself. I think a lot of the points that I made, I really, they were repeated on and on again. Ball fields, the revenue look, and whatever. So I think we've got our homework to do. I'll get with the Quarry Hills folks and company, and we'll sit down along with the administration and take a look at everything, and then we'll get a notice out again when we feel we've answered a lot of questions. There were a lot of questions sent in by the councilors that were answered tonight, but there were a lot that have to be dug into a little bit more into the lease, into the legal end of things. But I thought it was positive, and we'll get there. It's a beautiful venue. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. One thing I didn't want to point out is that, when this was, I think they said 97, a lot of times, and again, the lease is what they signed, that artist rendition comes out, and I've never seen an artist rendition that was exact. When you see trees flourishing and waterfalls, and not just at Quarry Hills, but anywhere, it always changes. I mean, there's 3 courses up there now. The clubhouse isn't where it is on this map. So, there's a lot of things that I look at this and say, things changed, as the plans go along. But it's a beautiful piece of land up there. It's great for the majority of Quincy, with the Little Milton added on the other side. But it's great for the city. It's much better than the dump we had up there for all those years. And I want to thank QHA and thank the Blue Hills and the other folks here, both positive and negative, but they were all pretty positive in regards to comments tonight. So I'll adjourn at 8:45 the ordinance meeting, and we'll come back when we're ready, I guess, with an understanding of all the answers and any other emails we get, and make sure we make a good decision for the city. Thank you.
We are now back into session for the Quincy City Council regular scheduled meeting is now 8:51 PM. Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda, please.
First item, swearing in of the Ward 4 City Councilor James Devine.
Mr. Devine, you may enter the well to be sworn in by City Clerk Crispo.
Hello. Good evening. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James Devine,
I, James Devine,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Commonwealth of
to the
Massachusetts,
Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and I will support the Constitution thereof.
and I will support the Constitution thereof,
So help me God.
so help me God.
I, James Devine,
I, James Devine,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent on me
as a member of the Quincy City Council,
as a member of the Quincy City Council,
according to the best of my abilities
according to the best of my abilities
and understanding,
and understanding,
agreeably,
agreeably,
to the rules and the regulations of the Constitution
to the rules and the regulations of the Constitution
and the laws of the Commonwealth
and the laws of the Commonwealth
and the ordinances of the City of Quincy.
and the ordinances of the City of Quincy.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, James Devine,
I, James Devine,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Congratulations, Councilor.
You can make, we're going to take a little quick recess for some photos, Mr. Devine and his family. Madam Clerk, before we get into the next agenda item, I just want to say to the newly elected and newly sworn-in Councilor Devine, welcome to the Quincy City Council. You've done the election side of the role of the city councilor. I congratulate you. You worked very, very hard for the position, for the role of Ward 4 councilor. I saw you quite a bit at all the meetings and throughout the city of Quincy. I wish you the best in your future endeavors up here with us, councilors. It's been now an absence of 4 months without Ward 4 being represented, and I wish you all the best moving forward. Now you have the elected position now to do the work. Any of the councilors have anything real quick? Good. Councilor Devine, do you have anything to say, if you may wish?
Well, thank you very much for those kind words, and I hope I can do as good a job as all you guys do, and I'm going to need a lot of help and guidance, so I hope you can all do that. And I'm looking forward to all this. It's a lot to take in, but super excited right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda, please.
Number 2, 2023-012, a confirmation of the Quincy Housing Authority Board appointment. The Quincy City Council hereby confirms the appointment of Brian Clifford of 10 Wilgus Road in Quincy Housing Authority Board of Directors. His appointment is effective immediately and will run through the first Monday in February of 2028.
Motion to approve made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Harris. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Mahoney. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative. This appointment carries. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Number 3, 2023-013, a resolve and update on purchase of
I'd like to recognize
610
Counselor
McGrath
Mahoney.
Highway.
If we could waive the reading. I introduced this at the last meeting, and this is about the purchase of 610 McGrath Highway for the purposes that was stated in the news publications was for an Alcoholics Anonymous building, and it was paid for out of the district improvement financing, and it was reported in the newspaper that it was being paid for out of the ARPA funds. And what I'm asking for is, the thing is it's not really, it's, the part of the reason why I was introducing this is it's for Alcoholics Anonymous, having family members that have had issues in the past. It's anonymous for a reason. That's a problem I have, the first problem I have with that. And the second part is that, we are, on multiple occasions, we have asked for the ARPA monies to be brought before us to discuss what the monies have been spent on, and we haven't seen that. And this is another purchase of another building, but it was actually out of the DIF 5 or DIF 4 financing, and that's not really what the source of DIF is supposed to be for. And more importantly, we're in the position where we're purchasing buildings now, and we're saying that for the purposes of Alcoholics Anonymous, when there are other nonprofits, other community issues that are happening in our community, and we have to be careful what we're doing because we're going to be getting to a fiduciary responsibility for being able to keep these things open. So what I'm asking for is for the city to come before us and update us, from the administration, update us on this purchase of 610 McGrath Highway, and then all of the reporting from the DIF 4 funding, what's been spent. This was not identified as one of the funding sources of what we thought we were going to be using this money for, as well as the ARPA funds and what's been spent to date. From what I can tell, from what I've been asked and what I've requested from Madam Auditor, it doesn't look like there's any funds to be able to cover this purchase. So I'm asking for this to be brought in and be brought into finance and oversight.
So motion made to put into finance and oversight. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilor Yang. Any discussion on these motions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Mahoney.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
No.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
8 members.
8 members in the affirmative. This will be moved into finance and oversight committees. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Next item is number 4, 2023-014, a resolve for a financial. Oh,
I would like to recognize Councilor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I wanted to introduce this as an update to a financial policy, a formal financial policy that was introduced to us by the administration back in 2017. 6 years has passed since then, and just by the nature of time, right, the financial markets change, and I think it's important to get an update. But on top of that, obviously, we've been through a pandemic. Since 2020, things have obviously been pretty unpredictable, and I think it's just a good time, as any, just again, with the passage of time and the circumstances that we've all been through, to just get an update on where we are currently as we're performing with the existing financial policies, and then just to do an evaluation, right? Do we need to update them by any chance? Specifically, whenever we are talking about borrowing and spending up here, I always find comfort in reliability in the financial policy that was established to say that there's a percentage of our overall spending that we can borrow up to, and frankly, there's a minimum as well that it's established there, and so I think it's really helpful to determine where we are with our borrowing power, and I just want to make sure that, again, with the passage of time, and obviously with the pandemic, what has shifted, what has changed, and do we need to update anything within those policies? So I'd like to make a motion to approve and also put into finance for that update, please.
Motion to approve and put into finance from Counselor Yang. Do I have a second? Seconded by Counselor Andronico. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Devine. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Mahoney. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative. Motion carries. Put into the committee. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Number 5, 2023-015, a gift for $1,000 from Twin River Technologies for DARE.
Motion to approve made by Counselor Kane, seconded by Counselor McCarthy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Mahoney.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative. Motion carries. Thank you for that one. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Number 6, 2023-016, a gift for $2,500, Copeland Family Foundation, Inc., to Friends of Wollaston Beach.
I recognize Counselor Phelan.
Thank you. Mr. President, I just wanted to, this money comes from the Copeland Trust, is used by the Friends of Wollaston Beach, and all the great programs they run over the summer and in the spring and in the fall. This is part of their funding that helps them to do a lot of those things that they do a really great job down the beach. It's a completely volunteer group of people, and we help them by taking the money in and clearing it through the city, and then they can use it on their projects. So I would like to move passage of this item.
Motion made to approve from Counselor Phelan and seconded by Counselor Kane. Any discussion on this motion? Any of the counselors? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Mahoney.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative. Motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our agenda items, Madam Clerk?
Yes, it does.
Yes, okay. Approval of previous meeting minutes, January. Motion made by Counselor Liang, seconded by Counselor Kane, and seconded by Counselor Yang. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. That's approved. That's a vote. Communication and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Okay, moving on. Unfinished business and proceeding meeting. Okay, moving on. Reports of committees. Any other reports? Chairman McCarthy, I recognize you. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this evening, we had the ordinance committee meeting on 2022-131, home rule petition for the Quarry Hills lease extension. I think everyone, by the comments from my colleagues and from the audience, both were positive and all in the same area of concern, be it audits or ball fields or whatever. So we'll go back and I'll get Counselor Devine a little bit involved in a Ward 4 issue, and we'll talk with the Quarry Hills Association a little bit more in the administration and get them to come back here in a few weeks, hopefully to answer our questions and have another meeting. So I won't schedule anything right now, but there'll be another one coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Ordinance Committee. Any other reports of committees? Any other counselors? Seeing none. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. Any counselors? Anyone? Okay, unfortunately, Michelle Glennon passed away just recently. She was, my condolences and prayers go out to the Glennon family as they lost her husband a month ago. It's unfortunate. She was raised in Quincy and as well as Weymouth, and she graduated from North Quincy High School in 1959. She was very active in many clubs throughout the city, the local Catholic Youth Organization and Women's Catholic Club. She was also a den leader for Boy Scouts of America and chaperoned many school trips. Some of the biggest things I saw about her obituary was she was an average traveler. Listen to these. She had a well-worn passport stamps of Aruba, Bermuda, Brazil, Canada, Costa Rica, Egypt, England, France, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Kenya, Mexico, Nicaragua, South Africa, Thailand, and the Vatican City. So she really enjoyed other cultures and all the wonders of all across the world. She's survived, obviously, by her sons, Brian Glennon and his wife, Helen, Kevin Glennon and his wife, Stephanie, and Sean Glennon and his wife, Erin. Sean is with our planning department as well, and Erin as well, and siblings, Enan McGinn, David McCann, and Edward and Ned McCann. She's also survived by many nieces, nephews, cousins, and she was a nice nana to Brian, Sarah, Robert, Andrew, Shay, Finn, Genevieve, and Tegane. She, like I said a little earlier, her husband, Brian Glennon, passed away this past December. So my condolences and my thoughts and prayers to the Glennon family. Keep them in your thoughts. Any other from any other counselors? I know real quick. The Quincy Lunar New Year, they did a fantastic job up at North Quincy. I know that Ward 6 Councilor Bill Harris gave him a nice stamp of a nice rabbit for the Year of the Rabbit. It's our first in-person Lunar New Year at North Quincy High School in some years now, since the pandemic had happened. We had our, on Zoom, we had our meeting. Want to thank everybody that was involved with it, setting it up from the city all the way down to having the performance and the line dance and all that stuff. It was quite fun to see everybody back in person. Any other counselors? Any other things? Motions, orders, and resolutions. Scheduling committee meetings and public hearings. Counselors? Remember the book? Okay, remember, budget's coming. So, do you have something, Councilor Mahoney?
I would just like to refresh everybody's memory. I asked recently, and I'm going to request again, that there are things in this book that we need to look at, the ARPA funds and the purchase of those buildings and the resolution I just introduced. So I would respectfully ask that we take those out of committee and have those discussions. We could have just as important of discussion on those things as we did tonight about the 99-year lease, and they are things that people want to know about. So thank you.
Yep. Councilor Devine? Go
I
ahead.
don't know if I'm supposed to ask this yet. I had a constituent ask me about our tree warden. Are we getting a new one or staying with the, is there a temporary one that
I'm going to ask, defer that to Mayor's Representative, Mr. Walker.
Okay.
If you,
Through you, Mr. President, there is an interim tree warden in place right now. I believe the search is still ongoing for permanent replacement.
Okay, great. Good to know. Thank you.
Is that for one or two?
that his answer? We're in the process, okay. Any other counselors have any other things? As we get into, obviously, we're in February now, obviously, we get into budget cycle with Counselor Phelan as our chair with finance. It's going to get busy, and in the Mays and the Junes to complete that. So I tell all the chairs, anyone for any type of committee, to make sure you get these in before that all starts, because it can be difficult. But scheduling committee meetings and public hearings, we have Monday, February 27th. We'll be back in here for the city council meeting at 6:30. It's in 2 weeks. And then we have Monday, March 6th, and Monday, March 20th, both of them at 6:30. So with that, councilors. Oh, motion made by Councilor Yang and seconded by Councilor Kane. It is now 9:16 PM, and motion is granted to adjourn this meeting.